Show off. Good evening, I'm Maggy Whitehouse and I'm the author of Kabbalah Made Easy. It's my fourth book on Kabbalah, which has become one of the passions of my life. Everything I do in teaching, I do prosperity consciousness as well, is rooted in Kabbalah. And the simple reason for that is that, well, my discoveries are that Kabbalah is the root of nearly everything. It's already been mentioned once tonight, and also it's been referred to in several different ways. And what Kabbalah is was the original oral tradition of the Judeo-Christian tradition. So it's the oral tradition that underpins the teaching of the Bible. And what's so important about that is it's the wonderful link between what we would call our New Age teachings, or our spiritual teachings of today, that can actually help us make peace with religion as well, which I find extraordinarily useful. I discovered it after my first husband died. It was one of those classic wake-up moments, and I'm sure you've all had those, where he died a year after our marriage, and the priest at his bedside said, "I'm sorry, my dear, but if he doesn't believe in our Lord Jesus Christ, he can't go to heaven." At which point, I mean, you're all laughing because we're actually at the stage where we can laugh about that kind of thing, but at the time it was a big thing. So I tried throwing that guy Jesus out of the window, but he just wouldn't go. He kept turning up again and again and again and said, "Well, you've got to sort you out, Maggie, not me." So I've got two diagrams here, and if you know anything about Kabbalah, you'll certainly recognise the second of them, not necessarily the first one of them. They're known as the Tree of Life and Jacob's Ladder. And these are extraordinarily old archetypes that go back way, way before the time when writing was common. Even in Jesus' time, 95% of people could not read or write, and of those 5%, about 6% of 5%. I failed maths, you may have noticed. However, most of them could just copy their name and they were counted as literate. So there wasn't going to be any tradition that was going to work that was not an oral tradition. And now I'm going to say the great damning thing, which is you cannot learn Kabbalah from a book. So that's me completely up the creek without a paddle. However, in the Made Easy series, you can make a good start with these things. I trained with a chap called Zeb Ben Shimon Halevi, who's very well presented in Watkins, and is one of the greatest teachers of Kabbalah in the world, to bring it to the whole of the world, not throughout Judaism, and to make it accessible to all people. And I've been very blessed in that I can write primers to his work. Now, on here, what you actually see is the four Gospels of the New Testament, strangely enough. We've got Matthew, the physical world, Mark, the psychological world, Luke, the spiritual world, and John, the divine world. And suddenly you start saying, hang on a minute, does this mean that there is a tradition underlying what Jesus taught? Which was what was so very valuable for me. I don't necessarily buy into the idea of Jesus going to India in the missing years. Maybe he did, I don't know, but he didn't need to, because all of the great teachings were in the oral tradition of the time. So they worked basically with divine inspiration, but also observation. They observed the cycles of nature, the cycles of the moon, and the way everything worked. And they had four basic elements, which was earth, water, air, and fire. And the teaching is that every single human being is a vital part of this whole great design of the universe, and we are of those elements. We have a physical body, we have the fluids in our body, we have the air in our body, and the life force represents fire, because a dead body, it goes cold very quickly. And I just scrawled a diagram to give you an idea how old this is. This is the menorah from the temple. You know, it's talked about in the book of Exodus. And this is the first tree of life. And if you look at this was a 7-branch candlestick, and if you look at it, if you just extend it out, you can see that it could quite easily move into that diagram, which is 11th century. And it also works, as you can tell by the colours, with the chakra system. So it's a fundamental structure or skeleton on which you can hang things. And in this very intellectual world, we have this extraordinary world with the internet where we're all after information, information, information. People like to come and talk to me and say, yes, but where does the Enneagram go? Fine, the Enneagram's there, there, there. Where does astrology go? Astrology goes in the triads and all the aspects. So you can use it as a structure that assists the work that you're doing. It's not a religion, it's a structure. It's been held safe by the Jewish faith for centuries, but it's not Jewish, it predates Jewish. It's just based on divine interpretation and observation of how the planet works. It's a matrix. It's a matrix. And once you start realizing that this is a matrix that I can hang things on, it kind of gives you a grounding, which is really, really important. And I'll give you an example which won't make any sense to you whatsoever, but you never know, you might have a little bit of luck. This area, whoops, wrong diagram. This area here is known as the soul triad. Down here we've got the body, we've got the ego, we've got the self. Here we have the soul, here we have spirit, and here we have the source energy. So it's quite a simple diagram, seeing how they will all interact with the other. This area here at the soul is represented by your sun in your astrological chart, your Mars, and your Jupiter, their house placings and their signs. And to give you a brief example of how the universe works, all things work together for good, is that I am a Taurus, but I have a Scorpio moon and Cancer ascendant, which means I'm very watery and emotional, and it's amazing I haven't cried yet. But my sun is Taurus, my Mars is Aquarius, which makes me quirky and unusual, and my Jupiter is in Leo, which makes me proud. So I have to work out those kind of balances. Now, my first husband died, my second husband is a goner, and my third husband, bless him, is the perfect one for me because his whole Mars, Jupiter and Taurus are in, Jupiter and Sun are in Taurus. And he holds me steady at my life's purpose. And we were actually able to work that out before we got married in a way that said, as we're getting married older, as we both make mistakes and had accidents and terrible things happen to us previously, are we willing to go into this relationship in a way knowing that we can nurture each other and actually help ourselves carry out our life's plans? So that's what's happened for me with Kabbalah, is that it's made sense of life. It may not be your tradition, and if after this little talk you think it's not for me, fantastic, because you can scrub it off your list and go and do something else now. But I found it wonderful, energizing and inspirational, and I do have a gift, having been a journalist for the BBC World Service for many years, of making things simple. So if you're interested, this is the book to read, Kabbalah MADE Easy.